Now, can we all get down this number here? So this fraction is 1 over root 2. Now, the issue with this is when we try to actually get a value from this in the decimal form, if you will, it's very hard to do 1 divided by square root of 2, which is what? What's the square root of 2? Can someone just give us a few digits? 1.41421, and then so on. Now, to actually do this, to work this out, that's pretty hard to do, isn't it? That's pretty hard to do. But what we can actually do is, if you input this into your calculator, what do you get? And then press equals. So you might have seen this before in trig. 1 over root 2 is the same as, I believe it's root 2 over 2, is that right? Yeah? So root 2 over 2. Now, this is the same as this, according to your calculator, which we can trust. So root 2 over 2 is the same as this. Now, this is a lot easier to work out in terms of a decimal form, because we know this is going to be 1.41421, and then forever, divided by 2. Okay, yeah? This would be 0.7, and so on, right? Ish. So we can kind of at least approximate this fraction to be 0.7-ish, but this fraction here is quite hard to do, okay? So we don't want to have a surd at the bottom of our fraction in the denominator. So what we want to do is do something called rationalizing denominators. So this is our title today, so rationalizing denominators. Rationalize denominators. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to see how do we actually get from 1 over root 2 to get to root 2 over 2. How do we actually get from there to there? So get this down again in a new line. 1 over root 2, we can times this by the denominator, so root 2, the denominator, over the same thing, root 2 over root 2. Now, one thing to be aware of here is this root 2 over root 2, that is what? What is this value equal to? 1. This value is 1, right? So nothing's changed. I'm not going to change this fraction. This value does not change. So if I times something by 1, the value does not change. But I can then rewrite this. So rewrite this as 1 times by root 2 to be root 2. And then root 2 times by root 2. So root 2 times by root 2, which we know is root 2 over 2. Okay? So 1 over root 2 times by this is equal to root 2 over 2. Okay? Let's do another example then. So let's say we have 6 over root 5. Can you rationalize this then? So rationalize the denominator of this. So 6 over root 5. Okay? So 6 over root 5, we're going to times by the denominator, which is root 5, over root 5. Oops. And then this should give you 6 times by root 5, which is 6 root 5. And then root 5 times by root 5 would give us just 5. And we can leave it as this. Okay? So 6 root 5 over 5, and that's our answer. Okay? If that makes sense, then I'm going to move on. Next one then, we'll do another one that's slightly different. So 7 over 2 root 5. Can we get this down then? Okay. We're going to try and rationalize the denominator of this fraction here. Now, what we can do is we can times by the denominator, so 2 root 5 over 2 root 5. Okay. And that's still 1. Okay, that fraction there is still 1. So this value is not changing. It's still 1. Now, this will become the same as 7 times by 2 times root 5. So what I've done is I've split it up to make it a bit more simpler. And then 2 root 5 times 2 root 5 is the same as 2 times root 5 times 2 times root 5. Okay. And then I can see, well, 7 times 2 root 5 there, that is just 14 root 5, isn't it? So 14 root 5. And then 2 times by 2 is 4. But then root 5 and root 5 will make 5. So 4 times by 5 will give you 20. Okay? And this is going to be made simpler by dividing both the numerator and denominator by 2. So 7 root 5 over 10. Okay. Now, does anyone know what is a shorter way or a more efficient way of doing this question? So 7 over 2 root 5. What we can do is we just want to get rid of this irrational number here, this root 5. I just want to get rid of that. Okay. This 2, I'm not really too bothered about. It's the root 5 that I'm bothered about. Okay. So I presume you're going to say times by root 5. So times by root 5 over root 5. This will allow me to get rid of my root 5 here into something that is rational. Okay. So I'm not too bothered about the 2. It's the root 5 I'm more concerned about. So 7 times by root 5 will give me 7 root 5. And then 2 times by root 5 times root 5 is going to be 10. And we know that's 10 because our previous example is also 10. So 2, root 5 and root 5 is 5, so 2 times 5 is 10. Okay?